Despite sounding like a portal to hell in some 80s horror flick, the Sinister window can, like most challenges, be an opportunity to utilize as a great tool. The visuals are designed to help identify where it exists precisely. If it helps to know, this is actually a thing. It's otherwise known as the illusion of explanatory depth. Stay tuned to the end to hear an example of my own when I discovered this Sinister window and what I learned from it, and for the principle to sum it up. Most people, and I certainly wish it were all people, get that there is plenty we don't know. Let's say this line represents the knowledge continuum, everything that is possible to know. On one side, we know nothing, and on the other, infinite knowledge. It's usually safe to say that what we know is less than infinite knowledge. That is represented below the vector towards infinity. When we know something, there's usually some measurable knowledge to gauge this. We'll represent these segments of knowledge with little rectangles. Within these, we know a thing. Let's even say that within the sections, we have definitive knowledge about a thing. One could argue that the more things we know, the more knowledgeable we are. As we add segments of knowledge to our brain, we know more and more. This can be very good. One could call this education. But it's not always good. Sometimes the more we know, the more we also think we know. Let's remember, there is always the vector that points towards what we don't know. Sometimes, we're aware we don't know everything, even within a thing we know something about. I've magnified one of our sections of knowledge here to represent our awareness that sometimes we're aware of what we don't know about a thing. Example, maybe you're a pastry chef, but pies aren't your strength and you stick to cakes. We're still safe here. There is something far more dangerous when you realize what's between what we know and what we acknowledge that we don't know. It is this small window that gets dubbed sinister because it is where hubris happens. It's where assumptions happen, and no matter how big or small it is, it's where the damage can range from annoying to catastrophic. This tiny space in the continuum of knowledge has the ability to stretch wide enough to let your entire life fall through. In fact, one person's sinister window can have the ability to let millions of lives fall through. Think of dictators trying to take over other countries because they think they know what's best for their people. It's an extreme example, but it still applies. We make decisions based on what we think we know. Simon Sinek says so in his book, Start With Why. And if you've ever seen my video, How to Accomplish Anything, you now know that the decision is the power behind what you do. Every instruction we give, every course of action we set, every result we desire starts with the same thing, a decision. Again, Simon Sinek. Therefore, what you think you know, in order to prevent it from harming you or others, needs to be questioned constantly. It also helps to acknowledge that what you think you know might be disproportionately larger than what you actually know, creating an even larger need to question and calibrate it. An example of where this can be managed is a thing or a subject in which there is much more likely to be a finite amount to be known. Like being a car guy and knowing just about everything there is to know about a certain make, model, or era of vehicle. This applies particularly to cars that have already been built, exactly recreated thousands of times, so someone who has taken the time to study and work on them for years may very well know just about all there is to know. There's probably still a thing or two that he only thinks he knows, but the risk is lower because of time, study, and practice on a fixed source. Example of a not-so-fixed source? Well, people, of course. Most, if not all, sciences, the medical field, warfare, any subject or entity that is or has the potential to constantly change provides a higher potential for what you think you know about it. If you've seen any of my other videos, you already know I'm going to focus on the people part. Here's an example from my own experience. I had a person working for me that I thought would make a great peer, a leader who would have a team of her own and work alongside me. We'll call her Min. She was dynamic and coachable, had great instincts, and was nigh fanatical about positive customer experiences. We laughed a lot, made a great team, balanced each other in tons of ways that reflected in the group of people we led together. They were consummate top performers and practically untouchable from a competition standpoint. The day came when I was proud to recommend her for the promotion, in case it added in any way to what I was sure was a phenomenal interview, and I was delighted to hear that she got the job. I looked forward to working with her side by side because I figured we'd be even more formidable as peers than we were when she reported to me. In one of our very first interactions after she got the job, an opportunity came up for me to offer a suggestion, much in the same fashion as I had done for the duration of her role reporting to me. She balked at the idea with more vehemence than I had ever seen before, and when I asked if something was wrong, she let me know that she didn't have to put up with my crap anymore now that we were peers. What happened? You can maybe imagine, based on the way I described my viewpoint of our partnership, how incredibly surprised I was, not only at her unprecedented delivery, but that she felt she had been tolerating something negative from me for quite some time. I had this rosy view that we were practically friends while we had worked together, and that she had tons of respect for me and all the things I had taught her. Those may have been true, but what I thought I knew was that this was the extent of what she felt about me. Turns out there had been some resentment for some of my tactics. For instance, she liked to argue and was willing to do so for hours. Occasionally, I pulled rank when I'd had enough of disagreement and felt we needed to move on. She hung on to this and maybe even collected more over the many months we worked together. There were times that I simply felt my idea was better than hers and made the call that it was what we were going to go with, as it was my name on the line if the idea went sour. I know now that those instances wounded her, made her opinion seem devalued to her, and caused her to look forward to the day when I no longer had the right to do it. Looking back now and her telling me she didn't have to put up with my crap anymore was in direct response to exactly one of those kinds of instances. My ideas weren't going to be welcomed for a good long while after she obtained that position. Where the sinister window really did its damage is in what followed. I was so devastated by that interaction that it fed a competition that eventually became a rivalry, and, at times, even a war between nemeses. It took years for us to repair the relationship, and by the time we did, we realized we'd both done plenty to devastate the countryside in the interim. Many of our teammates had to put up with our needless battles. It wasn't until much later, over quite a few careful conversations, that we discovered what happened and were able to find our mutual respect again. My regret is that we lost years of camaraderie and teamwork that I loved to be a part of. We created undue stress on a boss we both loved, who was caught in the middle trying to get us to cease the infighting, and we made a very strong team a little weaker than it could have been by distracting it with our strong personalities at odds. All because of what I thought I knew. You may think you know somebody, and you may actually know them to some degree, but never underestimate what you don't know, and always check in on the things you know. I have an action I take now that I learned from that series of events. I ask those that I work with, as well as my friends, constantly for feedback and criticism. I invite them to tell me how I can be doing things better and where I'm missing the mark. Imagine what I could have gained had I asked my old teammate questions like that. Imagine what I might not have lost. I'm grateful to have mended the damage with her, but that doesn't replace the time we spent at war with good times. All that's left to do with that time is to learn from it. Questioning everything we know, and especially that which we or others think to be known, is called critical thinking. It's so important that there's an entire college course dedicated to it, and is often referred to when you hear people say that college, quote, taught them how to think. While I would never discourage someone from taking any class, let alone one so incredibly valuable, I can sum it up with this instruction: question everything. Ask questions until something makes sense based on what you know about the world, and then keep asking. Get uncomfortable and comfortable again and again. You could eventually get to the foundation of what is understood to be true about a subject, and even then, be willing to accept more information on it. That's called wisdom. The principle: scrutinize what you think you know, and what others think they know, with the assiduousness of Sherlock Holmes solving a murder case. In this video, I referenced how to accomplish anything. If you haven't seen it yet, click here to see my process on getting anything you want. Thanks for watching the video, and be sure to subscribe for more like it. Click on the notification bell to be alerted to new videos.